I'm Ray Jones. I am the Pike County Judge Executive. And on behalf of the commissioners of the Pike County Fiscal Court, we would like to welcome everyone to this webinar on redistricting. I served 18 years in the Kentucky State Senate, the last 4 as Senate Democratic floor leader. And redistricting is a process that I would suffer through twice. I was involved in a situation where my initial Senate district was redistricted in a very partisan way. In 2012, when the redistricting efforts were declared unconstitutional, my district was changed in a way that was intended to isolate certain counties. And I ended up with a district that stretched from Pike County up through Martin County into Lawrence County, over to Elliott County, Morgan County. It was about a 2-hour drive from one end of the district to the other. A lot of people really don't understand the importance of redistricting. One of the major issues, of course, is not only does redistricting draw the state Senate and state House of Representatives boundaries, but it controls reapportionment of the congressional seats. And in turn has a direct impact on which party will control Congress for the next decade. Most of the time with the stalemate we're seeing in Washington right now, most of the issues that are not being addressed, particularly in social legislation, that you're not seeing addressed in Washington, is being addressed at the state level. We've all seen some of the social issues that have arisen in Georgia, Texas, and other states. And obviously, redistricting should be transparent and it should be fair. I'm not so sure that has been the case in the last several cycles, particularly the 2 redistricting cycles that I participated in. So I would like to welcome everyone to the webinar. This is a very important topic, and I will now turn it over to Ms. Karen Brown.
Good evening and welcome to our People-Powered Fair Maps Forum. This is being held in partnership with Pike County Judge Executive Office and Fiscal Court. My name is Karen Brown. I'm a member of the Kentucky League of Women Voters. I reside in the community of Union, which is in Boone County in Northern Kentucky. I am a year-long member of the State League, and in addition to being on the redistricting committee, I'm chairperson for membership. Our second presenter is Susan Perkins Weston. She is an attorney and independent consultant providing education and policy and data analysis to school systems within Kentucky. She's a member of the League of Women Voters Board of Directors and serves as our map developer for our redistricting committee. Susan resides in Danville. I'd like to give you just a brief background on the League of Women Voters, who we are and what we stand for. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization founded in 1920 by suffragettes who had just fought a long and hard battle for the right of all women in the United States to vote. After women received the vote, the suffragists thought their work was not done. They needed to provide education and support for the millions of American women who would now cast their very first ballot, for elected officials that would represent them at the local, state, and national level. In the beginning, from the beginning, they decided they would not support or oppose political candidates or parties, and that nonpartisan policy still stands today. However, League members do advocate or oppose political issues of concern to them. One of the important issues that we have been working on since 2020 is the issue of redistricting. The census data became available in August of this year, and the League members of the redistricting committee have been hard at work to have recommended maps or draft maps drawn that we can present across the state to all citizens and voters, so they have an idea of what fair, compact, and nonpartisan maps could look like. A couple of things about our presentation. We encourage you, in fact, we really want you to ask questions. Please use the Q&A function anytime during the presentation. We have two moderators, Becky Jones. She is chairperson of the League of Women Voters of Northern Kentucky, and Cindy Heine, who is also a member of our redistricting committee. She's a member of the Lexington League of Women Voters. If you submit a question to the Q&A, they have the ability to interrupt one of the presenters to ask your question, and you get a real-time answer. As we have done these forums across the state, we have recorded them and made notice of all questions and comments that we receive from the public. In order to have clear viewing of the maps, we ask that in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you put your screen on full screen and speaker view, and hopefully the maps will be made clear to you. So here's just the very basics of redistricting. After every federal census, which occurs every 10 years, redistricting is the process of drawing new boundaries for congressional and state legislative districts. Also, though, many judicial, city, county, and school board seats use this data. Our 2020 census data showed that the state of Kentucky had a 3.5% increase in population. We now are a state with 4.5 million residents. Redistricting will decide on our 6 congressional seats, and we are fortunate that we had enough growth in the past 10 years to retain those 6 congressional seats. For those of you who live along the Ohio River, you might have read where Ohio lost one of their congressional seats. So we're very happy we were able to retain all 6 of ours. We will also draw redistrict lines for the 38 Kentucky Senate seats and the 100 Kentucky House seats. So when will redistricting happen? Well, there's always the possibility that it could occur right now, fall of 2021, if the governor calls a special session to create districts for the 2022 elections. Excuse me. So that is still a possibility, even though fall is fast moving into winter. The other possibility is redistricting can happen in January of 2022. It would have to occur very early in the regular session and possibly move the filing deadline from January 7th back until at least maybe the 1st of February. And that would mean the maps have to be drawn and presented and voted on during the month of January. A third possibility is the maps are addressed later in the regular session, February, March, April, to set districts for what will be the 2024 elections. So redistricting, it can make it harder or easier for voters to engage in civic responsibility of voting. If you have a compact district where the district is drawn in such a way that it's not 150 miles from one end of the district to another, then voters have a greater chance to learn about their candidates and to communicate with them. It makes for parties to have to compete against each other, and competition is always a good thing. And when we have 2 strong political parties that compete against each other fairly, then we have a stronger democracy. It also can make it easier or harder for members of racial minorities to elect candidates they prefer. And it can also make regions within the state that have distinct interest to have more of a voice in their state legislature or less. And I think this is really important in talking to citizens in Pikeville, because I think you would consider your part of the state as Appalachia, and you would want your distinct interest to be considered in Frankfort. Why should you care? This is very important because as a basic tenet of the League of Women Voters, we believe that voters should elect their representatives rather than elected officials selecting their voters. When elected officials draw redistricting lines, they have the opportunity to choose their voters when they draw using party registration data. They can create what we call safe districts, and these are considered safe because elected officials have chosen their voters based on their party registration, and this gives them a pretty safe district in a general election. So what happens is they don't feel the need to compromise, and safe districts lead to polarization and gridlock, which I think this is what Judge Jones was referring to in his introduction. Another issue we have with safe districts is it many times makes the primary the election where an official is truly elected versus the general election. And primary elections usually have a lower turnout, which means we have elected officials that were elected with less than a majority of voters in the district. Another consequence is poorly drawn lines can lead to costly lawsuits. This is what last occurred in 2012. Judge Jones referred to that also. And costly lawsuits, no one really feels like they win coming out of those. So if we could draw fair, simple, and nonpartisan districts, possibly we could reduce the opportunity or need for costly lawsuits. So what's the best approach to a fair process? Well, considered the best is the independent commission. And this is where citizens throughout the state are chosen to serve on an independent commission, and they make recommendations to the state legislature about what the district should look like. This is not a possibility in Kentucky without a constitutional amendment, and we feel like that's just very highly unlikely. The next best is an advisory commission. This is what they have in the state of Ohio and other states. But an advisory commission usually has an equal number of each party members and then several members considered independents. But that has been rejected in the 2020 and 2021 legislatures. So we're down to best practice, which is a commitment to a transparent process with public hearings and input. In the past, maps have been drawn behind closed doors. The public was not allowed to be involved in the drawing of the maps, nor were they allowed to view the maps before the General Assembly voted on them and put them into place. So we had a House Joint Resolution 61 that was in the 2021 Assembly, but it was rejected. So because we could not have a legislative method or process of public hearings, listening sessions, any way to gather public input, the state League of the Women Voters decided we would do that ourselves. So we used our 2020 census data to develop district maps for United States congressional seats, the Kentucky Senate seats, and the Kentucky House. So we're using them to inform our fellow Kentuckians about how fairer and simpler maps can look. We advocate for fairer and more simple maps because they can reflect the wide public input we've gotten back in discussions with legislators and other citizens. We have been presenting our draft maps since 2020 at different events and organizations around the state, and we have compiled comments from citizens at each one of these presentations. So these are our draft maps that we're going to present tonight. After our completion of forum schedule and presentations, we're going to take that public input and draw what we call our recommended maps, and these will be shared with the legislature. So there are legal rules that must be followed in redistricting. And the most important, I think everyone would agree, is one person, one vote, which means Kentucky House districts must be nearly equal in population. They have to be very, very close to perfectly equal. Kentucky Senate and House seats must be within 5% of perfectly equal size. The third legal criteria is opportunity. Redistricting must provide districts of opportunity so that minority voters have a chance to select representatives of their choosing. And the third legal criteria is county lines. Kentucky Senate and House districts must not be divided except when needed to create nearly equal districts. So the league had additional goals that they aimed for in drawing draft maps. And number one was compact districts. We tried to have the parts of a district within easy reach of another. And that means having districts that are more concentric than a rectangle that stretches 200 miles from end to end. And how many legislators would struggle to cover a district that is 200 miles long, especially in parts of the state where maybe there isn't a major interstate to facilitate easy travel. Then we looked at county seats, and we decided that when we divide a county, we would try to create a district that was inside the county and included the county seat. That means that when the maps were drawn for Christian County, Hopkinsville, those maps were drawn in such a way that the city of Hopkinsville was divided into 3 different House districts. Well, that meant that the citizens in that community could live in one district, work in a second district, and send their children to a school that was in a 3rd district. And the league has felt that that is not conducive to strong civic engagement, and it can be a hindrance to our democracy. So we have succeeded most of the time in how we draw, how we divide a county. And then we said that we would be indifferent to incumbents. So we didn't consider how our districts might affect a current legislator, nor did we use party registration in determining our maps. So here we have a population change map from 2010 to 2020. I think probably everyone's seen this map or something similar. Kentucky's growth occurred down the I-75 corridor from Northern Kentucky all the way to the Tennessee border. It also went down from Northern Kentucky to Jefferson County, Louisville, and then further south to Bowling Green and the Tennessee border. There was also some additional growth along 64 East in Clark County and Rowan County, Fleming County. And then we've also seen population loss in Eastern Kentucky and Western Kentucky. So now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Susan Perkins Weston, and she will give you a very excellent picture on what maps, our draft maps, can look like.
Good evening. It's an honor to be here. And I'm going to pursue this. And I want to reiterate how much I love it when people put questions in the Q&A space. So we will try to work through this, giving you mostly specific to your region maps, but starting with the Kentucky Congressional Map. This is the map we currently live under with Kentucky's 6 congressional districts. I invite you to look at it for a minute with the question, what looks weirdest? Because I think there are parts of this that are pretty puzzling. Now, having given you a minute, I'll say it's the yellow that catches my eye. So the 1st congressional district out in the west of the state doesn't stay in the west of the state. It tucks down under the 2nd district and comes back up all the way to Casey County in the middle of the state. I live right north of Casey County. So I live less than 10 miles from the 1st congressional district, which also touches the Mississippi River. The other yellow district in the north is awfully long and slender, running along the Ohio River all the way from Jefferson County, all the way across to taking in part of Boyd County. I think the biggest clues to this structure are thinking about where Warren County and Bowling Green are, off in the west of the state, as our state's 3rd biggest city. And once you're committed to having Bowling Green be in the 2nd congressional district and adding Owensboro off in Davies County, there isn't enough population west of there to avoid running this sort of tail of the dragon along the southern border and up into the middle of the state. And then the solution to drawing the 5th district as an Eastern Kentucky district starts to be caught on having to fit that way. And then the Northern district sort of has to run from Eastern Kentucky and Boyd County all the way over to Jefferson County. I think that's what's happening in this map. Now, having given you that taste for what we're going to try to do better, I want to let you know how much we want your input and give you multiple ways you can share. One way, if you use the tiny URL address we posted here, we've set up a survey form. It asks for your email address, but we're not going to use it for anything but identifying your comments. If you come back later and add comments another time, we'll be able to tell that to you twice. Another option is to use the Q&A function during the forum to send us questions and your thoughts. You can also, if you prefer email us at info@lwvky.org. And that tiny URL map survey as an option for putting in your notes will stay open through November 15. So if you have thoughts later, or if you take the handouts and study them for a while and see new things, you can come back as often as you want and help us keep understanding how we could make the maps better. And then I'll move on. Actually, hold on, let me put this back and take a moment's pause to let you have another glance at that tiny URL as a way to get us your thoughts if you want to use the survey form. It's designed, it'll work on your phone, it'll work on internet. So here's my effort to build us a better version of a house map for Congress. The big change in the West is the minute that Owensboro was put into the Western district, it became a lot simpler. That Southern district in yellow could go comfortably all the way down to the Tennessee border. And if you look in the north, this time I've got the Northern district in blue, and it's fatter. It's not as long, but it's also not as skinny. And I think that comes closer to counting as compact. One effect of this is the Eastern district roughly had to be rotated sort of counterclockwise, so that you're looking at where the old district ran something like from 1 o'clock from 2 o'clock to 8 o'clock. Now it's like 1 o'clock to 7. But I did check carefully that the counties included all the way through were identified as Appalachian by the Appalachian Regional Commission. And I welcome thought from the region on whether I created a district that looks meaningful and appropriate. The Central District, the pink region around Lexington, was just made to fit within that. And then Jefferson County with Louisville has enough population that it can't be a congressional district by itself. A Kentucky congressional district needs to have about 750,000 people. Jefferson County has more than that. So I'll show you the close-up of that division. It requires, I think of it as taking little nibbles off of a big county. So here we have one nibble in the Southwest to increase the size of the Southern District, and another nibble in the Northeast to increase the size of the Northern District. And that's kind of how the sausage gets made, is deciding where to nibble. I was looking for fairly simple lines, interstate highways where they fit, major roads where they didn't, trying to help voters be able to say, oh, here's where the district is, and just name landmarks they know. Again, didn't always see an opportunity for that, and I might have been wrong, but I'm waiting for feedback from those folks too. It went two. Just to show you the 3 other counties divided in the congressional map. Grayson County got split between west and south. Harrison County got split between center and north. And Montgomery County lost a little bit of population to even out the difference between the central district and the eastern district. I should share here a further thought on revising these maps. We said one of our goals is to use the input before we make recommendations. The other thing to know is we built these maps using districtr.org, which is lovely online software for mapping districts. And it's free and it's colorful and it's pretty easy to learn. Its downfall is it uses census block groups, which combine multiple census blocks. And that meant we could get our maps close to exactly equal sized districts, but not quite close enough. These are a pretty good sketch of how to do it, with a little need to have adjusted where some population is. When we get to doing our recommended maps, we will use Maptitude software, which is state-of-the-art stuff, to assign individual census blocks, and we'll really be able to get to the constitutional mandate on nearly exactly equal districts. I did want to share that because I don't want to overrepresent what we've been able to produce.
Susan?
Yes.
About how many, what is the population of one of our, or all 6 of our congressional districts?
Very slightly over 750,000.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good to get started on the question phase. Moving to Kentucky House districts, this is a good map for giving you a general image of what 100 districts looks like, but pretty hard to zoom in on. So I'm going to show you a few examples of how this works. Starting with Pike County. Now, the rules say divide the smallest possible number of counties. For the Kentucky House, Pike County was a size that could not be one district and needed to be divided. This division looked to me unduly complicated. And a thing I would call your attention to, if you start at the bottom with the 94th district in green and follow the way it winds up into Pike County. I think that's a tough thing for voters to keep track of. I suspect it's been tough to campaign in. And this level of tentacles feels to me like it may have been more partisan than it ought to have been. The thing you see, though, is if you think about Floyd County, Floyd was too small to be its own district. So it had to add population from somewhere. And under the rules of divide the smallest possible number of counties, the only county that could be divided to round Floyd County up was Pike County. All large counties should be irritated at this. It comes from our state constitution, which says, don't divide any counties. We now divide some counties to honor the 14th Amendment's requirement of equal protection. But what has happened to the large counties, as soon as they were identified to be divided at all, many of them got divided a lot. One of our aspirations in looking for compactness is to do less of this level of dividing.
Susan, we have a comment I wanted to share with you from Nancy. And she says she likes the drafts and is especially pleased that you paid attention to the concept of Appalachian.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad. I have had many mentors building that concept for me since I moved to Kentucky 30 years ago. And it's clear to me that's a community to keep an eye on and make sure that there's thought about how well represented they can be. Also clear that the region is going to go through a lot of changes in mapping due to the population shifts. Let me show you another one of these divided counties. Whoop, it went too far. So this is about as bad as it gets. Harlan County was not large enough to have to be divided, but a county somewhere in that region had to be split in the last set of maps because Bell County is too big to be a district, too small to be a district by itself, and too big to combine with any of its neighboring counties. Districts that are more than half of the standard size for a district, you can run into trouble with the counties because you can't put two of them together if they're both more than half the size a district should be. So somewhere in this region, somebody had to choose a county to divide. The Kentucky legislature chose Harlan County. And I would say again, that while a division had to be made to create districts of equal population, this looks unduly complicated to me. With part of Harlan in a district with Bell and part of Harlan in a district with Perry County. That's another layer of, once they start dividing counties, a lot of division went on. I did want to give you a glimpse of how complicated it can be going a little far west here. This is the complexity of what happened to Pulaski and Laurel counties, with districts in which Laurel County, quite a large county, has no district located entirely in the county. And Pulaski also has no district located entirely in the county, and no district that, and neither of them have a coherent district to represent their county seat. For glaring closely at the map, I will point out that for Knox County in the 86th district, you're looking at a different shade of brown than the 82nd district. And all of these counties are connected to each other by sharing one or another district with each other, or with another county that shares with them. This to me was a challenge. Can we do something simpler for voters? And I'll now move to working on showing you some examples. We did our maps in 7 regional groups to make it a little easier to zoom in on them. We're going to focus tonight heavily on the Eastern region, but I want to mention that at LWVKY.org, you can see and comment on all of our maps. If you want to look at what happened to Elizabethtown, we would love to hear your thoughts. If you want to look at what happened to Union and Boone County where Karen lives, your thoughts are welcome, but we narrowed this down a little bit to get some extra focus in the places we thought you'd most want to think about. So here's our effort at dividing Pike County. And in this version, there is a district that's entirely in Pike County, and that's shown in green, and it includes Pikeville. And then there's one district in purple that's shared with Floyd County, and another in blue that's shared with Johnson and Martin. And I was aiming for workable boundaries. When I do this, I'm always aware that I'm walking on other people's eggshells. So if you're looking at this and you're seeing Susan, you split up another community in our county in a bad way. That's the thing I most want to learn in the world, is here's why this won't work for people who live here, because we need a lot of perspectives to see that and handle that well. I'm going to click over and show you, we had the same Bell County problem this time, and this really is driven by Bell. So in this version, Harlan County again looked like the simplest one to divide and the most responsible one to divide. And Harlan again shares a district with Bell County. Here, the other district is shared with Letcher and Knott. And I hope that the lines that look simple to me also look simple to people who know the region better. But this was an attempt to handle this well. And now I have to show you my unfavorite thing of the entire process of trying to draw these maps, which was dividing Boyd County. And this is 3 districts. There's one shared with Greenup in green. There's one shared with Lawrence in purple, and that one includes most of Boyd. And there's one shared with Carter and Lewis in blue. And what I don't like in this is that I have pulled Ashland essentially entirely into a district shared with another county, rather than having something that coherently represents Boyd as one of our relatively large counties. If I could have found a better way to do this, if I could have found a way to not divide Ashland and Boyd County up that way, I would have. I spent 6 or 7 hours trying different versions and could not find a version that didn't either violate the rules right here near Boyd or make it impossible to draw a district that included Rowan County. I would love ideas. If somebody sends me an email saying, try this and it works, I will dance a jig. But I couldn't find a way within our rules which say, when a county like Greenup is not quite large enough and you have to take some population from another county, I couldn't find an alternative to taking it from Boyd, and I would love for someone else to find it for me. I will leap with joy. I do want to show you that ran us all the way along the eastern border. Slightly inside from there, 4 districts were made without dividing any counties. And going from north to south, that's a district for Elliott, Fleming, and Rowan, a district for Bath, Menifee, and Montgomery, one for Breathitt, Magoffin, Morgan, and Wolf, and one for Leslie, Owsley, and Perry. Yet again, if this is missing features I should be considering carefully, these meet the legal minimums, but other ideas and other thoughts will be a huge help. I do want to show you the southern region. This includes the London, the Laurel and Pulaski challenges I mentioned earlier, but I found it fully possible to draw a district for Laurel County that included London and was entirely in Laurel County, and to do the same thing for Pulaski County. And then from each of those counties, I worked out the needed population for 2 other districts. I think it is possible for redistricting to be more workable for voters, and this is an example of trying to make that happen. So again, I want to take another moment to invite your input. If you're developing thoughts and working out how you want to share them, we would love to have them at tinyurl.com/LWVMaps. We'd also love to have them shared through the Q&A part of the webinar. You can send us email. And if you want to do your comments later, we're gathering them all the way through November 15 before we start trying to draw maps that use all the input. And then I'll move on a little further. And we can start talking about the Senate maps. This is our current map. Off to the east, you can see clearly the district that Judge Jones was talking about, starting in Pike County and moving all the way out to Morgan. You can also see a whole set of adjacent districts in the region that look to me like strings of pearls, running kind of from south to north, looking an awful lot like some of the last redistricting looked at districts that didn't quite have enough population and just adding a district further north. There are some examples that look like that elsewhere in the state. If you can pick out in the middle of the state, it's Casey County again. Its district actually runs from South Central Kentucky all the way over to sharing a part of Jefferson County. It's a very odd district. But I want you to see those strings of pearls for a contrast to what I can show you moving to our attempt to draw the maps. We did again do it by regions, but just 2 of them. And we'll focus on the eastern region now. I will say early on, in these maps, there are only 5 divided counties. We're able to make districts of the right size without dividing any counties other than the ones that were already too large to fit the law. So in the eastern map, here come the districts. And we'll see whether you love them, hate them, can tell us what we can improve, or can give us an idea of what's going to work. So up in the north, we have a yellow district for Bracken, Fleming, Harrison, Lewis, Mason, Nicholas, Pendleton, Robertson, and Rowan. Boyd County gets a more coherent Senate district than House district that would include Carter, Elliott, and Greenup. The Pike district now includes Johnson, Lawrence, McGoffin, and Martin. It's still a stretch, but I'm hoping that looks a little more sensible this time. Breathitt, Floyd, Letcher, Perry, and I'm going to have to move my copy of the pictures here and not make a district just south and also east of Pike County. Bell and Clay, Harlan, Knox, Leslie, and Owsley together. And then I didn't want to label every part of the map, but I did take one step further west to include that blue-green district with another set of eastern counties. This doesn't have strings of pearls. It isn't super compact, but given the obligation to not split counties, and given how the population of the region is distributed, this is what I could figure out to make it work. And yet again, if I've made a mess of something, my best chance to learn is if you all teach me. I will mention that in the east, Fayette had to be divided, in the eastern half of the state, Fayette had to be divided. So it has 2 Senate districts that are entirely in the county, and it shares 2 others, one with Jessamine and one with Madison. And this is radically simpler than what they've lived with for the last 10 years. And in northern Kentucky, again, aiming for simplicity, Boone and Kenton counties had to be divided, but Boone only has 1 split, and Kenton has a district of its own, and then shares some with Campbell and shares some with Boone and that other set of pink counties. So we were aiming for it to be easier to look at, and we're gathering input to figure out whether we actually made districts that would be easier on citizens and voters. And I'll make one more pitch to welcome your thoughts and questions. And then I'll be ready to turn it back over to Karen. And here's Karen reappearing.
Thank
Please
you,
feel-
Susan.
And I'll just say, please feel free to hit us with more questions. We're used to people making us work.
So what can the legislator do to move towards fairer maps? One thing we would like for them to do is consider public input, the citizens' opinions that we've gathered through our forums and our small group presentations. We would like for them to have hearings when they have created their draft maps, and allow the public to voice an opinion by letter, email, or any other way to communicate citizens' opinions. We ask that the maps be transparent, share the maps before they are voted on, allow citizens to see what their districts are going to be, and again, comment if they have a different opinion. We also would like for there to be broad support. We appreciate them building a redistricting plan that can pass with bipartisan support and substantially more than a simple majority vote. We think if these three elements are taken under consideration, the public would be more supportive of the maps and possibly reduce the opportunity of another lawsuit. So how can people get involved and help us in our work? Ask your legislative leaders for an open and transparent process. Send a message online at legislature.ky.gov or call 1-800-372-7181 and leave a message for your own legislator or a legislative leader. The people who answer that 1-800 line are very, very helpful and friendly, and they do an excellent job, and they make sure that every message goes to the person you asked for it to go to. On our website, LWVKY.org, we have a petition, and we would appreciate your electronic signature on that petition. We have been gathering those over the last several months, and we're really happy with the number we have obtained so far. If you have signed electronically, but you have a group you are friendly with and you would like to print one and hand it to people to vote, then you can easily download the petition off our website and take it to your next group meeting, your book club, whatever, and ask the people sign the petition. Also, attend one of our Fair Maps forums and talk to your friends about these. These are all placed on LWVKY.org, the recording. So if your friends miss this, in a day or two, they'll be able to go on our website and view this forum. Judge Jones, did you have a comment you would like to make?
Yes. First of all, let me point out a little nuance. In 2002, former state senator and former Lieutenant Governor Daniel Majordo had a disagreement with the state Senate leadership, and he had been elected in the same cycle I was elected in 2000. His district at that time, I believe, was Harlan, Bell, and Perry, maybe Leslie also. But what happened was they moved his district number. The number, you're basically elected to serve in a district. I was elected to serve in District 31. Senator Majordo was elected to serve in District 17. In the redistricting in 2002, that district number was moved to Scott County. So technically, Senator Majordo represented Scott County because he was elected to that Senate district. And essentially, the district that included his home county of Perry County was given the district number, I'm thinking maybe 34. My numbers may be off. So he was forced to run for re-election 2 years after being elected to the state Senate. And that's a process that needs to stop. It's happened in other instances as well. If my memory serves me correct, in 2012, that was one of the reasons that the maps were declared unconstitutional, because it impacted former state senator Kathy Stein. Now, obviously, partisan politics comes into this equation. There has been a tendency to try to put candidates in districts that were disadvantageous, and as you mentioned earlier, to put candidates in more favorable districts. Some states, of course, have tried the commission approach. It's not worked very well in Virginia and other states. But the one thing I think that there needs to be legislation on, or at least some type of court decision, is this idea of district numbers being moved as a way to impact the state Senate maps. And also, I wanted to mention, one of the reasons that I left the state Senate, when I was first elected, the district was Pike and Letcher County. It was a compact district. I could travel the district easily. In 2002, the district was Pike, Martin, and Johnson County. So I had to drive all the way through Floyd County to get into Johnson County. And then in 2013, the district went from Pike, Martin, and Johnson to Pike, Martin, Lawrence, Elliott, Morgan. And I made a lot of great friends, and it was a tremendous honor. I loved representing every county, all 7 counties that I represented, but it was a tremendous, tremendous challenge to make public meetings across the district, to travel across the district. And in those types of districts, discourage people from running. The map of the House district in Pike County, we had 4 state representatives, 2 Republican, 2 Democrat. I'm friends with all of them. I think they all do an excellent job. They're all great people. And the problem is Pike County, which is the largest geographic county in Kentucky, does not have a Pike County resident now in the House of Representatives. We have 4 candidates, 1 from Floyd, 1 from Letcher, or 4 representatives, 1 from Floyd, 1 from Letcher, 1 from McGoffin, and 1 from Martin. And that's really, in some ways, disenfranchised a lot of voters in Pike County who feel that, there at least needs to be 1 person from the county in the state House of Representatives. And I want to go back to something I mentioned earlier. The whole notion of what's happened in Georgia and Texas and other states where they've passed legislation to make it more difficult for people to vote. I mean, in a democracy, if we want to protect our democracy, we need to do everything we can to encourage civic participation, civic literacy, to get people involved, to make it easier to run for office and to vote. And the redistricting process in the 2 cycles, actually 3 cycles, if you count the 2002, 2012, and then back in 2013, a lot of the public was never really included in that. There was no public input. The maps were typically done behind closed doors by the majority parties in both chambers. The Senate did their own maps, the House did their own maps, and that's how they were passed. And in reality, the people, for instance, in our home county, Pike County, had no input in how those maps were created. The same thing was true in the state Senate. There was no public input. And in many cases, people in some of the counties, when the representation changed, it was a way, in a way, it disenfranchised a lot of voters. And it's something that I think we need to have much more transparency and much more public involvement. I just wanted to make those comments, and in particular to discuss that little nuance about changing district numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Jones, and we very much appreciate those comments. Again, we want to encourage everyone to go to our website, lwvky.org. Look at the maps. You can look at them in much closer detail. You can view some of the past forums. Again, you can recommend to your friends that they watch this forum. It will be placed online in the next day or 2. Next slide, please. So if you're interested in the work of the league, there's ways you can reach out to us. You could send a question or comments to info@lwvky.org. Give our main office in Louisville a call, 502-875-6481. Please look at our website, lwvky.org. Use the tiny URL comment website. Please put your comments in by November 15th. And then please use our app Outreach Circle. And we use that to keep citizens informed in real time about issues and any activities of the league. The QR code is right here. You can click on that, set up the app in your phone. It just takes a minute. And then you will receive updates on a continuing basis about the important work of the league. And we could send you a message and say something like, the maps are going to be released publicly. Please go to this site or that site to review them and comment. So definitely use the Outreach Circle app by the QR, and then it's also on the App Store or Play Store. Does anyone have any questions or anything they would like to bring up before we close? I want to thank Judge Jones for assisting and sponsoring this forum, and our map manager, Susan Perkins Weston. And we look forward to having another forum, possibly in another area of Eastern Kentucky. And thank you very much for your time.